Welcome to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Steven Greene, where you'll discover actionable strategies to help your student to reach their academic goals, to excel at standardized testing, and to plan for the college admissions process painlessly. And now, here's your host, Dr. Steven Greene.
Hello, everybody. Steve Greene, the Success Doctor. And you know, if you have listened to this podcast, I get very excited when I have a guest on, especially a highly qualified, exciting guest. Welcome, Regena Rosa Celeste.
Good morning, Steve. How are you?
I'm doing great. Regena joins us all the way from sunny Miami.
Yeah, just outside of Miami.
Yeah, the power of the internet. You know, it's like we're right next door to each other. Regena is what do you want to call you? A internal. What would you say your title is?
So I'm often affectionately called the Internal Peace Revolutionist.
Internal Peace Revolutionist. So they might be asking the question: how is this going to help parents and help students with their academics?
Such a good question.
Excellent question. The question of the day. I'm going to answer it right away. A calm, relaxed, focused student is a more productive student. It enables you to study better. It enables you to show what you know better on a test, especially a high stakes test like something like the SAT or a final. And Regena is here to help you with some tools to get these skills. So let me just kind of bring this in here by telling you about her a little bit. She's an international speaker, best-selling author, and recovering perfectionist. Yes. Commonly known as the Internal Peace Revolutionist, she specializes in speaking, coaching, and teaching skills of internal peace. Conscious-minded men and women hire her to support them in getting unstuck out of their quicksand that they feel their business and personal lives are in. Knowing each individual is responsible for her own happiness and fulfillment, Regena specializes in teaching tools of lasting transformation and helping people create results that stick. Changing the world and how the world experiences peace with over 50 plus tools and techniques. She equips her clients and students to empower themselves for lasting change. She knows teaching the people tools of inner peace would impact and believes each person is responsible for their own happiness in the world. By creating more inner peace, there's more abundance in the world, more wealth available, and an opportunity to create greater health and deeper connection with each individual's life mission and purpose, creating more sustainable and inner peace collectively. Ooh, that's a mouthful. So let's kind of sum that up. Could you restate that in like one sentence? What would be your core message to the parents and the students and the Make the Grade audience out there?
Absolutely. It's all about self-responsibility. And my true belief is that when we each get radical about our own internal peace and our own happiness, we can really, we are changing the world by doing that, because we're not looking for outside sources to make us happy. Like, you know, for example, with parenting, you know, parenting is a tough job. And I think it can be very challenging when you're right. I mean, I'm not a parent per se, but I, of course, I think we all have areas of our lives where we feel like we're parenting or we're being parented. And I think at the end of the day, it's very important to have respect for our parents and also to have respect for our kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's always something to learn. And so if you're a parent listening, I think it's really helpful to know that there are resources available to support you and to support your children. Because if they're happy in school and they're getting good grades, it's a reflection of their, my experience is that when kids are excelling in school, it's because they have very abundant lives and they're feeling supported in life. So, I mean, my intuitive knowing, right, or belief is that a kid, doesn't matter if they're little or if they're college age, nobody really wants to fail in school.
Oh.
It's not like anybody raises their hand and says, "Hey, I want to be a failure when I grow up." Right? So if there's a learning disability or some challenge, it's a challenge because they don't know how else to do it, or they're not motivated to do it. right? We don't want to say they're lazy, but they're
Absolutely.
not
Well, you know what
motivated.
I find? Let's the educational system is what it is. It focuses on academics, right? Learning how to read, learning how to do math, learning how to maybe a foreign language, history. It's subject and information based. One of the complaints I get a lot is, well, sure, they teach all this stuff, but they don't teach kids how to manage their time, or they don't teach
Mm.
children how to study. So my kid, the smart, quote unquote, smart kids kind of figured out on their own, and the rest are just left to kind of do it. But another thing they don't teach at all, and maybe it isn't even the appropriate place to do it in a school, is self esteem. And some schools are addressing this now, but it's very recent. Personal accountability. Look, nobody goes through life without problems, right? So I think I'm probably going to get the saying wrong, but it isn't the problem; it's how you deal with it, or something like that, or it's how you react, or I don't know. Help me if I'm saying it even close.
No, you're saying it right. Yeah, it's not what happens to us, it's how we
There
deal
you
with it.
go.
It's our
See, this is why you are here, Regina, to to set the record straight. So, what I really want people to get out of today's conversation are some tools or some ways of thinking where a child like a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, they got a lot going through their mind. They got a lot through in their lives, especially in the last couple months. Where would you say this would start? What would be the first step that a parent could take, or maybe an older child could take on their own to kind of get them on this path of more, maybe I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, inner control?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very appropriate. Like when you said you're not sure if it's an appropriate place to start, I think it's critical, right? Like personally, when kids, and I taught kids, I taught Montessori kids
Uh-huh.
all the way up to middle and high school. So I didn't teach them in, regular everyday class, right? But as a yoga teacher, I would go in and I teach them yoga practices and tools. And what I find is that children and older kids, they're not they're not wanting to act out for the sake of acting out.
Huh.
It's usually they are challenged at whether it's at home or internally, right? Like you said, self-esteem issues. It's a battle that they're having inside of themselves, which is inherently showing up outwardly, right? So whether it's showing up in poor grades or they're skipping classes or they're doing, whatever is preventing them from doing well in school, it's because they haven't built up a strong enough system around them, whether it be classmates, right? Like that's why I love sports, right? I'm not an athlete per se. I don't think of myself as an athlete, but I think extracurricular activities are super important, and especially even now, right, when the world looks very different than it used to, it's really important even for homeschooled kids to have that interaction with other kids, because it helps with cognitive conditioning and also with societal connection. Like it's a sociology and a
Hmm.
psychology conversation. Is are the students feeling, are the kids feeling, what is the word I'm looking for, included, right? Are they feeling included in society? Are they feeling included in their communities? Do they have friends? Do they have a social network, right? It could be two friends, doesn't matter the quantity. It's, do they feel supported? And if they don't feel supported, I think it's really, really a dis it's a missing link that I think people forget about. And it's so
Hmm.
important, I think, because if a child or adult kid doesn't feel heard or seen, they're gonna they're gonna validate not being heard or seen by not showing up, which is where I believe the low grades come in, or the skipping school, or the not caring. They get like apathetic and they just kind of give up, right? But it's not they're giving up because they want to give up. They're giving up because they feel hopeless, because they feel like they're not smart enough, or they feel like they aren't good enough, right? Which is, those are worthiness conversations. And as adults, we have that too, right? It's not like we get to 12th grade and then
Well,
it's
right.
it.
It's not like you
Like,
leave your baggage at the graduation of high school.
right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it even gets more confusing for people as they get older, right? Like you get to graduation and how many times, you look in the mirror and you're like, now what?
Steve Greene here, the success doctor, with my guest, the make sure I get this right, Internal Peace Revolutionist, Regina Rosa Celeste. Let me bring up two things. And I want to hear your opinion about both. In my world, which is academics, most people's standard of success is grades. I don't want to say all, because there's no absolutes, but I think generally, if a kid comes home with A's and mostly B's, or B's mostly A's, whatever, parents are going to say, hey, the kid's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. And then, so I think some of the, uh, let's call it, for lack of better terms, psychological things that might be going on are just not a concern until they spike out of normal. And I think so that's usually a standard where it kind of makes everything better. It's like, okay, the kid's getting good grades. So what if he's this? So what if they're that? So if they don't have any friends? Da, da, da. And I think in some cases, issues may surface later, or they're sort of boiling under the surface a little bit, right? And I think the other side of this is a kind of a peer pressure thing, because I've seen situations. I could give you one case study where I had a student who was unhappy with their parents. The kid actually wanted to move out of their house. Okay, there's a lot to this. We don't need to get into the details. Was angry at the parents, wanted to move out. It was a really bad situation. I got brought in to help with academics. Well, the kid was basically failing on purpose, literally writing incorrect answers on purpose, even when they knew the right answers, because he knew it would push the parents' buttons. It would just make the parents angry. Well, by doing this, actually, sort of ironically, sort of increased his cool factor with other kids. Here's this kid, he's failing. Hey, that's kind of cool, because in a way, there's this weird psychology. It's okay to do bad if you're sort of cool with it, if this makes any sense at all. We're talking about middle school, high school. So I'd like to hear your viewpoint on, take sort of, I want to be careful what word I use. I'm going to say de-emphasizing grades as the standard of success. Like in the same way that a lot of people in business only gauge money as the standard of success, right? There's a lot of rich people who are
Yeah.
unhappy. There's a lot of very happy people that don't have a lot of money. But I think, so I want to get your opinion about that, and then how you might counsel a parent or really even a student on how to deal with the peer pressure of, oh, it's not cool to take care of yourself, or it's not cool to meditate, or something like that. I know they're two not exactly overlapping ideas, but I think they both contribute, at least I've seen in many, many years of working with students and families, to a dysfunctional performance. So what do you think about both of these?
Well, I think it's very interesting because like it makes me think of so I grew up in the 80s. Like I was born in 81, so I'll be 40 next year. And I
The big hair era.
remember
The
the
big
what?
hair era.
The
Yeah,
big
for
hair
for
era,
those of us,
exactly.
who lived through the 80s.
Yes,
It's still,
big
and here's
hair
the funny thing, the big hair era is back with the
era.
no haircut COVID look. Anyway, so you grew up in the 80s. Yes.
Everything's
Everything
cyclical,
cycles
right? And it
around
comes
30
back.
years, whatever, 40 years later, I got big hair again. Anyway, go on.
It's true. Yeah, and so I remember the Dare. We had the Dare campaign, which was all
Staying
about
off of drugs.
stay off of drugs and really like teaching kids to stay away from drugs. And I thought that was super cool. Like I remember the ads, and they started with like very kind of stoic ads, and then they came out like more into like
The whole sort of scared
having
straight
cartoons.
thing, and then they've eventually evolved to the scared straight and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, and there
Mhm.
was all these different versions,
Mhm.
and I remember they even had like Scooby Doo on some of them, and so all these different things that we used to grow up with as like ways to remind us and kind of connect with us. And what I remember about that was they made it really clear to me in the marketing and advertising that it wasn't cool to be a failure, and that like being smart was cool, right? And like even nowadays, like I don't wear glasses. I had LASIK surgery done, but I used to wear glasses like yourself, like for many years, right? I think since I was four, right? Fourth grade, I got glasses the first time. And I thought I was such a dork because I had glasses, right? Now I love glasses.
Hmm.
Like I literally bought a pair of glasses for aesthetics, like for cosmetic, because they're just cool, right? So this whole idea that people have, they're just societal, almost like what's the word, like tattoos,
Hmm.
like temporary tattoos. So I think the question becomes is, what are we teaching the kids? And as parents, like what is it that parents need to know that it's safe to have these conversations with your kids? Because your kids are going to be taught different things outside of the house, and that's why inside the house it's so imperative to teach them, I feel, good values of and what is good, right? Then it comes, so what is good, what is
Mm-hmm.
bad? At the end of the day, even a parent who's, and I'm just going to be extreme here for a moment, even a parent who's not a great parent and they themselves are, let's say, on drugs and doing their best, right? By societal norms, that's not a good parent. But if that parent is doing the best they can, and that parent is trying to go to work and obviously has an issue and has, their own challenges that they have to deal with, that kid is going to need extra support, which is why I think it becomes a community, I don't want to say problem, but that's why it's so important for like parents and friends of parents, right? Like I remember I couldn't go to a friend's house unless my parents had met their parents at least once, sometimes three times, because my mom was super strict. And she was like, no, like you're not allowed to go to, Susie's house until I meet her parents three times. And as a kid, I was like screaming and yelling and, I was pissed, right? Now I'm like, thank you. Thank you so much. So kids, if you're listening, like know that your mommy and daddy love you and that's why they're giving you rules. And then parents, do not be afraid to set boundaries. Kids need boundaries. Point, period, end of story. Like you don't want to be a tyrant, right? And you don't want to give them unreasonable parenting. But I think it's really, really important. Like my mom was super controlling as a kid, but I think I turned out all right. I mean, there's of course things that I've had to undo, like all of us. But but I think it's really important as well. And I don't want to sound like I'm speaking from two sides of my mouth, but I do want to emphasize that also in the same breath, trust that trust that kids are intuitive and trust that kids know that they know more, I think, than sometimes we give them credit for.
Yeah, I think there's always that balance, very delicate,
Yeah,
and of course it's age appropriate. You're not going to let a
of course.
6-year-old, do whatever they want. But as a child
Right.
gets older, particularly 16, 17, 18, when they're on the cusp of going off to college, where you're going to have to let go. I mean, assuming they live at college. Um, Let me ask it this way: if I'm a parent and my only standard of judgment is how well my kid does in school based on their grades, okay, and a kid comes home with a bad grade, which can happen. It's not always purposeful or whatever. What tools in terms of the internal peace or whatever? What would you suggest? Let's say the reason the kid is struggling is because they study, do all the right things. They go into the test and they just freeze up. And this happens. Call it test anxiety, call it whatever you want to call it. They just can't get the information out, or maybe they can't work quickly enough. I hear that a lot from my caseload. I knew everything, but there was 80 questions and we had 50 minutes to do it. I ran out of time on question 58 or whatever. Are there any simple, yoga, whatever, these breathing. These are lifelong potential practices, meditation, right? But is there something simple, but yet powerful, something somebody could do consistently to help them overcome these sort of things, or at least ameliorate them?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And I mean, I've seen it, right? I've seen it, and that's why I'm so passionate about working with kids as well as adults. Is I see what yoga and meditation and even just simple breathing techniques can do. Like it reduces anxiety, reduces stress, actually builds self-confidence, builds spatial as well as cognitive awareness, right? Like how many times something happens and you just say, "Oh, I just felt it.
And your
I just
intuition,
knew."
right?
Right? And all of that is because when we can quiet the noise around us, we can actually tap into our higher self, which is the self that most of us want to be, right? But we, for whatever reason, we have limitations or we have blocks and fears and insecurities and doubts. That's the stuff that keeps us from being our higher self. Because the higher self is always there. The higher self is the one that says, I'm going to ace this test. I'm going to do really well. And then there's this other little part that says, no, you didn't study enough. No, you're stupid. No, you failed the last test. What makes you think
So
you're
it's
going to
almost
pass
like the
this time?
angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder, sort of thing.
Yeah. So there's some really simple techniques. Like I actually offer a free 3-step process, and I'd be delighted to share that with your audience and anyone listening
So
today.
tell us
It's a
about
free
this.
gift.
What would the 3 steps be?
So 3 steps are, and I have this on audio, so if anyone forgets, it's okay. Just let me know, and then I'll share that with you. The first step, of course, is um, recognizing, right? So let's say something happens, and you see your grade, right? You get the test, and there's a big F on it, and you get upset, of course, or you don't care, and you pretend like you don't care. You grab the piece of paper and you pick it up and you crumple it in a ball and you find the first wastebasket. I want to throw it in there. So in that moment, when you get the test and you see the grade, you have a choice, right? So the first step is stop and reflect.
Write these down.
So you stop and reflect and you ask yourself, how important is this? And then the second step is you ask yourself, okay, how important is this? And then you actually get to choose in that moment, do I want to hold on to this or do I want to keep it? And when I say this, I mean the feeling.
The emotion.
The emotion, exactly. Do you want to stay upset or do you want to find a solution to change the situation? And then the third is you let go. So the third is letting go, right? And you can choose to let go of the idea of perfection, right? You can choose to let go of the idea that you're a failure, because passing or failing a test, and even that word, like I'm challenged with that word failure, right? Like when they say in school, pass or fail. Like
Right. There's got to be a
that's just,
continuum somewhere, right?
yeah,
Nobody is an absolute failure where they know absolutely zero.
right. And so going back to, even Michael Jordan, right? Like he's a great example. And there's thousands of people, even this past weekend, Steve and I, we were speaking at an event. One
You
of the
are.
topics I spoke about was saying yes. And some of the greatest quote unquote failures in society that started out as failures actually became some of the most successful people that we know, like Michael Jordan, Walt Disney World,
Albert Einstein.
Albert Einstein, right? These are people that were told that they were stupid, they were dumb, they were lazy.
Never amount to anything.
Yeah,
Right.
they weren't going to amount to anything. Not Bill, Steve Jobs was fired from his own company. I mean, how does
Unceremoniously.
that happen? Like it's,
I never really understood that, even in the movie.
yeah. So,
Um,
you know,
let me tell you a story
sure.
about me. And I teach. This is my job, right? This is my career. When I moved to Pennsylvania, I lived in New Jersey, and I had to get a driver's license in Pennsylvania. So I go to the DMV center, and I walk in. I need a Pennsylvania driver's license. So they said, well, go over there and take the test. I thought they were talking about the driving test. At that point, I've been driving like 7 or 8, probably 10 years. Well, no, they wanted me to take what was then called the written test. Okay, where you actually, how many feet from a stop sign do you slow down, and how many car lengths should be behind a car going 50 miles an hour, and what does this sign mean? All these esoteric questions that, frankly, once you start driving, nobody really cares about. So I go over, and it was on a computer. They had just brought computers into this test center. And I forget the exact numbers, but I think it was like there's 25 questions. You had to get at least 21 right or something like that. But as soon as you got the 4th or 5th question wrong, they basically booted you out. So it wasn't like you got to finish the test and get your score. Well, I think I got my 5th one wrong on the 16th question. So it was a personal, you talk about this, stop and, reflect. It was a personal humiliation. Here I am, like a test prep expert, failing a test miserably on something I probably should have known. I knew how to drive. I drove home from the test center, but so what I did, which is exactly one of the solutions here, was I went over, I got the book, how to pass the test. I read the book. I came back. I think it was 5 days you had to wait to do it. And there was very specific information that you needed, which I learned, dealt with, took the test, passed, and then pretty much just forgot because you don't care about it. But the 3 steps that you outlined, I think are very appropriate. You got to basically put it into perspective.
Absolutely.
Yep. Then you have to either let it go or assimilate it, or kind of deal with it, and then just say, hey, look, it's time for the next thing. Let's talk about, let me give you a scenario, and you give us a suggestion. I'm going to give you a couple. I'm a kid. Let's say I'm in 8th grade. I'm a decent math student. I studied. I'm feeling like 90% confident. I walk into the test room, and now I'm all of a sudden getting a little bit of anxiety. What can I do? Is it just a matter of stopping, trying to calm your mind, taking 10 deep breaths, or what would you say to this? What would you say to this person?
Yeah, I mean, 10 breaths is great. And they, it's funny because even this morning in my teaching, I offer a free meditation series that I do, or meditation and yoga every day, Monday through Friday, and 8:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And so somebody messaged me late last night, and I woke up to the message, and it was all about breathing. And she was saying, I've been having a hard time breathing lately. And I thought, okay, got it. So today's meditation was all about breathing. And it was super simple. We just did, a couple deep breaths in, couple breaths out. And it literally, even just a count of 10 breaths, even 5 breaths. You don't even need 10.
Is it just that simple? Just like going, is it, for 13, 14-year-old who may not be as in tune with their, I don't know what word I want to use, inner mind or whatever, but is there something, specific you could tell them, like breathe in? Is there some pattern to it or anything?
I mean, I think the more simple, the better. So like literally breathe in, breathe out.
Hold it, just bang. And that just calms everything down. Yeah. Just takes it down a notch or two.
And I mean, the truth is it might take a couple rounds, right? Like everybody's different. Like if somebody is, and this is maybe not a great example, but let's say somebody just is in the middle of a fight, right? Mm-hmm. Like a brawl, and you're on the laptop, on the blacktop, and somebody's in the middle of a fight. It's going to take you maybe 40 rounds of in and out before it actually does something, but it will do something 1000%. Like I haven't yet, but I've thought about saying that these 3 steps, I guarantee will work, or your money back, because I am so confident that they work, and they will work, because there is nothing, even if somebody, God forbid, has, I don't want to use even that example in this conversation, but if
like a real medical issue,
like
or
somebody
something
has a gun to your head, like God forbid, like even just those,
so it's something that's not typical, certainly in a school, hopefully.
Like even if it's not something typical, that breathing will calm your mind. And it
Let me go ahead.
just
Go ahead.
the importance of knowing that you have control over yourself is everything.
Right. That's the key, I think, is the control. Let me give you a second scenario I hear a lot from my students. And this is more like the high school. I go into the test and I'm on a roll. I'm feeling good. I get question 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 12. All of a sudden, question 15, I can't answer. And I all of a sudden go into this, like, everything stresses up. Now they're in the middle of the test. They don't have that 5 or 8, whatever minutes to kind of get ready. Same advice, just back off, calm it down. Is it really the same process? It's just a matter of being mindful to do it?
And that's the hardest part. Like, even that's what I even shared this morning, was it's so easy that it's easy not to do it.
They're so
It's
simple.
so simple. Like, if we don't brush our teeth every day, our teeth get pretty gnarly, right? Our breath gets yucky. Like, our teeth don't do well, right? Like, imagine brushing our teeth is pretty simple, right? But for a 4-year-old who's just learning how to brush their teeth, it hurts.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
So think of it like brushing your teeth. Just because you breathed yesterday or you took a shower doesn't mean you're not going to do it today. Right? But it's really really easy to forget. Like, even somebody who's not physically well and might be in bed, breathing is possible. If they're able to breathe, right? If they're not hooked up to machines and stuff. Like, the breath, it's our life force. It's the one tool that we don't have to pay for. We don't have to service, right? We don't have to take it to the shop to get fixed.
That everybody has
Like,
available to them.
if you're alive, you have breath, right? And even somebody who's compromised, like, and it's funny because, like, as an adult, like, I don't know why today this is so relevant for me, but as an adult, it's very, especially as we get older, it's so much easier to forget these simple tools because life gets challenging, life gets chaotic. We have to pay bills, we have to do all these things. So, parents, like, if you're breathing and then you start teaching your kids to breathe, like, you'll be cooking dinner and you just start taking a few full breaths as you're cooking dinner. And let's say your kid walks into the kitchen. Hey, mom, what are you doing? Oh, I'm cooking dinner.
Breathing.
And I'm breathing, right? And that becomes a conversation. Like, well, how do you breathe? You just breathe. Just breathe in and exhale. And you can feel it. Like, right now, I can feel my lungs stretching. I can feel my chest opening. I can feel more energy. And it's so, so subtle, but it's like, wow. It's like watching a flower bloom, And when we think of breathing like that, it totally, like, melts my heart. And I don't want to get, like, sentimental on the on the call, but I think that
No, but you're obviously passionate about what you're teaching.
and it's mostly because I feel like it's something that is so easy. And we, myself included, right? Like, we go and we do all these things, we buy all these gadgets and do hickeys, and this is going to make you better and this is going to make you better, and it does. And we have this innate tool inside of our bodies called breath. And when someone, God forbid, is on their deathbed, what is it that they want? They want another breath.
Interesting.
Right? So when we can be in a state of true gratitude, like, the only reason we get stressed and we get anxiety is because our breath actually gets compromised, and then we start to have shallow breathing. That's where anxiety and panic attacks come from. So if you're in the middle of a test and you're freaking out, start breathing. Remember, it's just a test.
So the basic tool, I mean, what we focused on, the way this conversation evolved, is to be conscious of your breath, to use that as a tool. And I think that's an appropriate, simple term to, reduce your stress level, reduce your anxiety level, whether it's pre-test, post-test, or really whenever it's appropriate. Steve Greene here, the Success Doctor. I am talking to the Internal Peace Revolutionist, Regena Rosa Celeste. And let me make a quick mea culpa here. I was very stressed about this conversation. I was very nervous. I had to do 7 deep breaths before we hooked up today. It's actually not true, but it would have really helped because there's just a lot. Listen, there's a lot going on right now. Whenever people listen to this, we are right in the middle, mid, and who even knows of this whole COVID-19 mess. Everybody's out of whack. Let's do a couple things, and we're going to wrap this up. Number 1, every day, Monday to Friday, 8:15. Regena does. It's on Facebook. It's live. Anybody can see it. They just have to be on Facebook, right? A live guided meditation, breathing exercise for 15, 20 minutes or something like that.
Sometimes a little less, like 10. It's usually 10 minutes to 15.
So it's just like a solid way to start your day with the right vibration, to use a 60s term as opposed to an 80s term. Yes. Okay. So how would people find that? Is it just they search for you? Give the listeners how they can listen to that or join.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways. The easiest way is you can text me to the word yoga, YoGA, to 64600. And I send out reminders and I let people know kind of where to find me. But I'm very accessible on social media. On Facebook, it's YogiRLEstateReg. I mean, that too, but Regena Rosa Celeste. And then on Instagram, same thing.
Anything as a close, we didn't talk about, or you want to double emphasize, or, what's your sort of take home message to parents who are trying to help their students or students who are trying to help themselves? My podcast typically is about trying to give people tools, trying to give people actions. I think the breathing exercise is fabulous. Is there anything else or anything you want to just, get out there that we haven't had a chance to address?
Yeah. And thanks so much, Steve, for the opportunity and the, conversation. Cause to me, it is a very powerful conversation. Like, kids are our future, right? It's not even our future. It's our now. And when our kids are healthy, we're healthy. And so I think it's really important to see it as a unit. And so I do a lot with families, and I have right now actually an event that I'm putting together this month, June 27th.
So let's plug your events here, because you have 2 really valuable things coming up in July, right? Or July and August. So tell everybody about that, both in June.
Yeah, they're coming up pretty soon, actually in 2 weeks.
So number 1 is the first one.
So the first one is actually called the Peaceful Pivot Health and Wellness Conference. And on this event, or at this virtual event, which is free, it is going to be an afternoon, 4.5 hours of pure education and content, and really speaking with experts. There's 9 experts that are part of the community and sharing not just their expertise, but also strategies and tools to help your family succeed with natural health and wellness. And each specializes in a different area. So it's going to be really cool because you're going to have different aspect. And
this is June, what
June
day?
27th. It's a Saturday. And that's from 12 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. And then
the second event is
the Accessing Internal Peace Workshop. And that's Tuesday, June 30th at 6:00. And that's also virtual. And that's where I'm going to be sharing some tips and some very simple strategies, like I did today, on how to access internal peace.
If people text yoga, YoGA, to 64600, would they also learn about these?
They do. I send out reminders and different messages. So it's a good way for us.
So let's keep it simple. I'm going to recommend that you pick up your phone, type in yoga. I'm not sure what number. I guess yoga. Right? YoGA. Yep. Simple. 64600. Yep. And then you'll get in Regena's information loop. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time. It's at least where I am. It's a beautiful day today. Not quite Miami weather, more like nice late spring Philadelphia weather here. Don't you have connections in Philadelphia?
I do. Yeah, it's funny because I was going to ask you something after we record about
I will keep it
Philadelphia.
offline.
Yeah, no, it's great.
It's still here.
I love visiting, and
it's still here. It hasn't gone anyplace.
Yeah.
It's big city. All right. So thank you again. My goal with this podcast and with everything I do is to give parents and students actions they can put into place to maximize their education. Most of the time that's academic, how to study, how to manage your time. In some cases, we're kind of going inside a little bit and learning how to deal with some of the challenges and the stresses and the anxieties and whatever word you want to use of just real life, going to school and having the pressure of trying to do your best all the time. And I really appreciate Regena's just simplicity of how she brought this out. And I'm going to kind of throw a challenge out there to everybody. Just try this, right? There's nothing negative that can happen. If worst case is you just breathe a little more slowly for 5 minutes. But I think this will help everyone. So I'm very appreciative of that. Last thing I want to tell you really quick is that we are starting a series. If you are a parent who was stuck at home during the COVID shut-in, or if you're still stuck at home, having to work at home, and you had to homeschool your children or oversee your children's homeschool, I am looking for parents who would like to be interviewed. Although I don't really love that word. I'm going to say have a conversation about your experience. You can do it anonymously if you want. You go on record if you want. But I really want honest feedback. What worked? What didn't work? Was it positive? Was it negative? What was positive? What was negative? Because what I'm trying to do is put together a consortium of ideas that can help people if we have to move forward with this. I have a feeling in September, we're not done with virtual learning yet in the way that we've seen it. And I'm trying to be the strongest resource I can for everyone. So, Regena, let's hear it from the audience here.
I love it.
Yes, we are live in the studio. There's about 500 people here cheering wildly.
Very fun.
Yeah, there we go. So I will see you somewhere. Regena and I are actually taking a class together, but so I'll see her at that Thursday night, and that's how we connected. So get out there and network, meet some people, meet some like-minded people, meet some people that help support what your goals are, and roll from there. So until next time, Steve Greene, the Success Doctor, Regena Rosa Celeste, the Internal Peace Revolutionist, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to Make the Grade with the Success Doctor, Steven Greene. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe. For more resources and support, please visit makethegrade.net.